I can't.
But I was raised in 2000, or I was initiated in 2001, raised in early 2002.
I can't remember what year I was. I don't go anymore, do you?
I go when I can, but that's not very often.
Is that right?
It's a little rough, I'm not gonna lie.
The 3 degrees?
But I could get through them, yeah.
Do you go to the Scottish Rite?
I've never went through anything other than Blue Lodge. I just never have had the time to do it, but I want to.
I went through the Scottish Rite, York Rite, and Shrine.
And the Shrine, so you've done all three.
I've gone as far as I can go by myself.
One of these days, I'm going to do that. It's just, you know how that is. I mean, between working as much as we work.
Oh yeah.
You know, got a full-time job as a father to an 8-year-old daughter. Full-time job as a husband. Something goes by the wayside. And unfortunately, a lot of times that's the Masonic Lodge.
That has to be the thing that goes by.
And I hate it because I love it. I love the lodge. I always have it. Now, I probably went 5 or 6 times this year. But I mean, I just don't go near as much as I used to. I went every time the door was open.
Andy Payne was big.
I know Andy well. Yeah. Andy's
you and him favor.
We're about the same age, and we've went through the lodge, done about the same things. So now I think he's winning some of the other things. But we were both, I think, masters the same year.
I
was
remember
in Charleston,
when he went
was in Cleveland. So yeah, we've been in about the same. I think about the same amount of time. He may have been in a year or two more.
The
than me.
Masonic Lodge is. I don't want to say it's not as populated as it was. Right?
It's not. It's been increasingly getting. It's a generational thing. It's a cultural thing. We're not as social as we used to be as a society.
Now, why is that? Because, and that was before COVID.
Oh yeah.
The COVID.
No, this is nothing new.
Yeah. Like you take the Lions Club or the Kiwanis Club, or they still any of them.
Any of them.
Home Builders Association.
Rotary. Any of them. I'm a Rotarian. Any of them is that way. We don't socialize like we used to. We don't get together for gatherings as friends and family like we used to. It's too easy to sit down and get all your information sitting on your phone by yourself. We've lost the ability as a society, or I'll say we are losing. I don't know if we've lost. We are losing the ability as a society to know how to effectively communicate with each other. We've lost our abilities to conflict resolute with each other, sit down and actually have a dialogue to deal with problems. We'd much rather escape to our phones, our tablets, YouTube, whatever, where we don't have to do that, where it's just instant gratification. I see that. I see that all the time. The number of children being born a year is declining. The number of marriages is declining. And I think a lot of that has to do with we've lost our ability to socially interact, or we are losing every year. Social clubs like the Masonic Lodge, I think there's 51,000 now in the state of Tennessee. That number has been greatly decreasing in the last 50 years. And I think a lot of it is, like I say, there's no social time anymore. Back in our parents' age, people got together and socialized in the evenings. It was the big thing to go out on Fridays and Saturday evenings and socialize with your friends and socialize as a community. We don't do that anymore.
And after church, everybody went to somebody's house.
And ate and socialized.
And now it's how fast can you get to the gondolier?
Exactly, or somewhere. We don't socialize anymore. And it's a sad trend.
I don't know why that is.
I don't either. But that is where I think technology, the speed of technology has gotten to do with it. My daughter, she talks with her friends online. They all link up and talk together, which is nice. And now you're starting to see a different trend in, say, the generation of, say, 18 and younger. They're starting to socialize again. I'm starting to see that a little bit more, especially in her. She loves to be the social butterfly with her friends, and they all get together. But instead of all of them being in the same room, they're all on a group, up on a video screen, all talking back and forth. But hey, whatever.
Like a Zoom thing?
Yeah, but at least they're doing it. And they do it all the time. They do it every day. I mean, it's, all of them get together. But at least they're doing that. At least they're not isolating themselves.
Well, and even the churches are getting to be these mega churches.
Yes.
And there's not any of those, 80 people churches around in the rural areas like there used to be.
No, they're not.
This COVID might put them out.
I know it's putting some of them out. I have a very close friend. I call him my little brother. He isn't, but I call him that because I was his field training officer when we were both police officers, and he kind of little bro, big bro kind of thing,
Yeah.
and we're still close. We talk almost every day. Well, he's a pastor out in West Texas. He left the law enforcement, went into full-time ministry. He's a pastor out in West Texas, and he says, it's all I can do to get people to come to church, because it's just like there's just so many other competing things, and he's a small church, and they're just drying up, and he's trying to get creative to think of ways to get people to show up.
Our church during COVID, they did this online thing,
We did too.
and some people are still just doing it.
Oh yeah, we have people that do
They
it.
just don't even come. You don't stay in their pajamas, I guess.
We have had an interesting thing happen. I go to St. Luke's downtown, and we had an interesting thing happen. We went to the online. We did what we had to do to keep things going. But we have got an online following now of people that aren't even from here. They don't even live in Cleveland. We've got people that go to follow our church every Sunday that live in England, live in Canada, all kinds of different
That
places.
makes no sense.
And they have asked to join the church and have joined our church virtually.
And not scam artists.
They've never been there before. No, not scam artists. They've never been there before. So we're rolling with the punches and coming out with new ways to reach people. So, our attendance has actually increased through the pandemic. If you look at the online people.
Yeah.
So it's
What's
interesting.
gonna if you played this tape to the end, what's gonna happen?
As far as what with the pandemic to the
No, I
end?
mean as far as people not socializing. I mean there wouldn't be a Lions Club, there wouldn't be a Kiwanis Club. I mean like the good fellas, the odd fellas. Remember them?
I think we're going to reach a point where it's going to turn back, because I think we've hit a valley. Just looking at my daughter's age and looking at them, I think they've hit that valley as a society, and now they're coming back with maybe her generation as starting it, or the one ahead of her.
So the pendulum swings
The
the other
pendulum
way.
is starting to swing, but it's different. Now they're starting to socialize again, but they're using technology to socialize. Where I think you had a generation of, say, us, our families, our ancestors, all socialized in person. Then it's like with the millennial generation, they just dropped off. And now this new generation is starting to want to socialize again, but they're using the tools that the millennial generation learned to be able to do it. So maybe it's evolving into a new point, and I hope it is.
Maybe it's out of boredom.
It could be. That would be a boring life to me, to sit around and never talk to a soul. I mean, I couldn't do it.
If you take a regular Saturday night, would you most likely go out to eat with friends, or would you just stay home?
I think the younger I was, the more I loved going out with friends. And now I think there is some comfort hanging out in my recliner with the dog, watching TV, because I don't ever get to do that with work and everything going on, as crazy as life is. Sometimes you really do cherish that time almost to just unplug and just be by yourself, or be with your close loved ones, and not have to.
Yeah,
Go.
your wife.
You love that downtime occasionally.
I hope that's it, because that's what I'm starting to do more, is just stay home and watch TV. But I don't want to be antisocial, and I'm not, because I'm talking to people all day. I've eaten at every restaurant lunch in town.
Well, that's me. I go from 6 o'clock in the morning till 7 or 8 o'clock at night, sometimes later, and I'm constantly interacting with people. So now, every now and then, that plug off with it's just Stacia and Addison and I sitting around watching something meaningless on TV, just spending time as a family eating some popcorn or some pizza is nice.
What kind of pizza?
What kind of pizza?
What'd you get?
Oh, well, see, here's what I like. I'm glad you brought this up. You ever eat a 1,000-degree pizza?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
No,
place.
not 10,000.
Is it? It's hot. I know that. It's the one over there by Foolin's.
By Foolin's.
Foolin's,
Yeah.
They have this thing, and I love New York style pizza. I like it thin crust.
Yeah.
I love New York style pizza. New York is one of my favorite places on the planet to go to, primarily for the food. I love the food in New York. But anyway, I like it. I get it with the spicy sriracha marinara. I love things hot. Pepperoni, grilled chicken.
A pizza with sriracha on it?
Sriracha
Oh, that'd be
marinara
hot.
sauce. It gets hotter, believe me. Tell you what else I put on there. Pepperoni, sausage, grilled chicken. I have them take buffalo sauce and I have them glaze it with buffalo sauce, cook it with that, put olive oil on it, and put give me a minute, not Parmesan, but the spices on the top of it there, and cook that.
Not red peppers.
No, not red pepper.
Not cayenne pepper.
No, although that would probably be pretty good.
Yeah.
Oregano.
Oregano, yeah.
Put some oregano over the top of it. Cook that. Oh man, I had leftovers of that for lunch today from the other night. I love that's a good pizza.
But that is sriracha's hot now.
It's not too bad.
It's
the
pretty
buffalo
hot.
crunch. Well, this isn't. Let me put it this way: the pizza, the 1,000-degree, the sriracha, spicy
Sriracha's more of a Asian type hot
now,
sauce to me.
I love hot food. I love Cajun food, but I like something with some spice. But they do it right there at 1,000-degree. I must say they have really good pizza there.
Well, I'm a big Pizza Hut guy. It's the
Stuffed crust,
thin.
can't go wrong with
I
it.
like the thin,
Yeah.
just thin hamburger. That's it.
Okay, there you
With
go.
that extra red sauce.
Oh yeah, I like it. I like the thin and crispy crust.
We eat Pizza Hut. We eat pizza every Sunday night.
There you go. Now, have you ever been to New York City?
Oh yeah,
Okay, there's a place called John's. You ever eat John's before?
I've eaten at Ray's.
Okay, well, John's is over in the theater district. It's off of Times Square. It's over in Midtown in the theater district. In fact, it was an old theater that they've turned into a pizza place. Best pizza I've ever had in my life. But it's that real thin
Is
crust.
it oven brick fried stuff?
brick oven, thin crust.
What is it
Man,
about
it's
the
a-
brick that makes that sound taste better?
Well, that 1,000-degrees is the same way. It's that brick style. I don't know. I don't know if it's just the air that comes up, circulates, and comes back down into it. But it really does
It
make
does.
a difference.
It makes a difference.
It does. It's hands down better that way. So yeah.
But if you go somewhere like Domino's, it's just not the same.
It's not
It's
the
just
same.
it's different.
It's not. And my wife loves Marco's,
That's where my wife goes.
and it's good, but it's not.
It'll work.
It'll work, but it's not the same.
It's
No.
not the same.
It's acceptable. Don't get me wrong.
Now,
but
when you eat pizza at home, are you a big Coca-Cola guy or Diet Coke? Or
I do like my Coke with my pizza. Now, I'm a water person. I drink a gallon of water a day. My doctor tells me that's what I need to do, so that's what I do. So I keep my little jug with me. I got it out in the Jeep now, but I keep my jug with me, and I drink it all the time. But I can't have water with pizza.
you can't have
There's
water.
just certain things you can't do. I like a Coke, straight up, regular, not unleaded, just straight up, real sugar Coke,
Yeah.
or a good beer. Can't go wrong with
Or
that.
water.
Or, huh?
I used to go eat lunch with this guy at Pizza Hut, and he would always order milk.
I can't do milk.
I don't know why.
I can't do milk.
He
I'm
did
allergic.
that
I'm allergic to lactose, so I
religious.
can't have milk.
Now, why do you? A gallon is what, 64 ounces?
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a
Yeah.
lot. Don't you have to pee a lot?
You do, but my doctor wants me doing that. So,
What's the purpose of so
well,
much water?
I'm on blood pressure medicine,
Uh-huh.
and if you ever take blood pressure medicine, one of the things they want to make sure is always get your kidneys going. So yeah, that's okay. Keeps the system clean.
Have you been on blood pressure medicine a while?
No, but probably about a year and a half. Just mid 40s, stressful job, just kind of gets there. And plus, it's in the family. My dad has high blood pressure. My grandfather had high blood pressure.
Was yours run if it's not checked?
If it's not checked, usually the 140s over the 90s. It's not horrible,
Not real bad.
but my doctor would rather it be about 120 over about 78 or so. So that's about where it stays.
What about your
And I don't
heart?
take
What
it real
about your
strong.
pulse thing?
Usually it's in the 70s. So yeah, it's not too bad. I do a lot of cardio, so I mean I try to keep it down. I do. My wife and I we walk usually about 3 miles, probably 3 days a week at least. So yeah, we just try to keep it moving.
What days a week?
Usually Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Most of the time. Occasionally we'll hit a Monday, but usually we've both got things going real early in the mornings on Mondays. So usually those Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are good with us.
I took after church, I got a Subway sandwich and went up to the Whitewater Center
Can't beat that.
and walked all the way down to the bridge and came back up, and
Oh yeah.
it was nice.
Oh, I love that area.
But
It's
the
gorgeous.
bathrooms aren't open.
What's up with that?
I don't know, why would you not have the bathrooms open at I guess is it a state park or
Oh,
what is
it's
it?
federal park.
Why
that's
would you
US
not have the
Forestry Service.
bathrooms open?
Well, you'd think you'd have them open during the day. I get it, not at night, because bad things
Sure,
can happen.
yeah,
at
close
night.
at 9 or whatever, dark.
Dark 30, whatever. Sometimes bad things happen at night in those places, but not during the day when people are actually out using. I'm sure you weren't the only one there.
No, it was full. People would walk to the bathroom, it'd
That's
be
what I'm
locked,
saying.
they'd
So,
walk
I
upstairs.
don't know why if you were I understand.
I don't get that.
No, I don't.
It's
either.
almost like a trick.
Yeah.
You think, hey, we'll stop here,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and there's nothing there. Now, walking is very good for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you
Absolutely.
keep up a good pace, or you just...
We do. We usually do probably about a 15-minute mile, something like that. So yeah, not too bad.
It's good to have a thing like that you do on a regular basis.
Well, it's good, I think, mentally and physically. It's good physically because it keeps your body in check, but also it's good mentally just to know that you've got that time to get away. You know, my phone's not ringing. Or if it is, I'm not answering it. You know, I'm spending time with my wife. We talk. We enjoy our day to get started because we both work crazy hours.
You don't walk in the mornings, do you?
Oh yeah, usually we walk early in the mornings. Usually, that's
Like
our
what
time
time?
to do that. Well, my daughter has to be at school at 7:15, and we take her to school and then just hit the walk right after that. Usually go till about 8 o'clock. Usually we're finished by about 8 o'clock, 10 after, something like that. So we're both, that way we can get to work.
Very good possibility life will get in the way and you won't be able to keep doing that.
Someday, probably. But right now we're going to cherish that time.
What's stressful about your job?
Being an attorney?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, the same things that are stressful for everybody else's jobs. You've got deadlines, just like everybody else does. We've got things that have to be done, but then we have the personal aspect of it too. It's not the same as just looking at an academic exercise. It's not the same as looking at numbers on a piece of paper. This is somebody's life, and that person's life is in your hands. Due to their own decision making, a lot of times has put it there, but their life's in your hands, and these are people. They have families.
Do you really feel that pressure?
Yes, absolutely. Now, they've committed crimes, or they wouldn't be there with me. I'm a public defender. But that doesn't change the fact someone loves that person. That person's life matters. That person is a human being. The Lord made him just as much as he made me. And that does weigh on your mind. So that part, the stress part, kicks in.
Do you ever have them call just to want to talk?
All the time. And I talk to them.
And
Because sometimes I'm the only person that listens. And I'll give you an example. I have a client. I'm also going to say his name's Chris. That's all I'm going to call him. Chris is in prison right now because Chris needed to go to prison for what Chris did. But we helped Chris out a lot. We got a chance to tell Chris's story. And Chris got a lot less sentence than he would have had probably had we not been involved because we were able to work his case thoroughly through. I got a letter. Chris called every day. Every day he'd call me.
To worry?
Sometimes. Sometimes he just needed affirmation that somebody else will listen. And sometimes I think he just wanted to hear a voice on the other side. He had no one. His parents disowned him. He had no one. You could check his call history. I'm the only person he ever talked to. Got a letter from him in prison about a month ago. Just a nothing. Hey, man, just wanted to talk. How you doing? I wrote him back. Don't know how many letters he gets in prison, but at least he got one is mine. Just, hey, I appreciate you always being there. And, that makes you go on. Because some days you have people that don't really feel that way about you, and that's okay too. So, yeah, sometimes they call just to talk.
But he's not necessarily a bad guy, right? The guy that...
This guy, he did bad thing. Thankfully, nobody got hurt. Other than himself, he was the only one that got hurt. But it could have been very, very bad what happened. I'm not going to go into it exactly, but nobody got hurt. But do I think he's a bad guy? No. I think he got put in I think he did some poor choices in life that ended up to the position that he was in when that happened.
What are some rules that we had in the past that people would go to jail for a lengthy time or something, but they're not even a crime now?
Well, let's see.
Like a prohibition, maybe?
Prohibition, for starters. In certain parts of the country, marijuana possession, which is still illegal here, but in certain parts of the country, that's no longer a crime. But definitely prohibition. Maybe blue law violations that we don't necessarily see anymore.
What would that be?
A lot of times you had laws, especially in your more conservative areas of the country, in the South, in your more conservative areas of the country, that were more necessarily moral type laws that we don't necessarily have anymore.
Would people go to jail for that?
Oh yeah, there are people that were convicted felons of homosexuality. There were people that were convicted felons of opening your business on the Sabbath, various things like that now are not necessarily a crime, but were felonies at that point, at certain points in our history. So those type of things.
Boy, that would be bad to say. Say we all died and we all go to heaven or wherever, and they say, how'd you spend your life? Oh, I did this. They said, well, when I was alive, they didn't care about that. Well, they did when I was there. I spent my life in jail.
Now, the reflexive is true as well. There are things that were not a crime 50 years ago that are definitely crimes now. That
Give me one of those.
Let's see. Let me think about this. Obviously, certain automobile things. Obviously, certain traffic laws that are crimes now that weren't then. Drug laws have gotten way more strict now than they were 50 years ago.
The alcohol's gotten less.
Alcohol's gotten less. Drugs have gotten more. Certain crimes that have to do with obviously computer stuff, cybernetic crimes, things like that. Those are obviously changed now that weren't necessarily a crime then. There are two types of crimes, okay, that are necessarily what we talk about. There is what we call, it's a Latin term, malum se, and that is basically translates to a universal wrong. Murder has always been frowned upon by human nature, okay? Theft has always been frowned upon. Certain things like that, robbery, rape, things like that. Now, the definitions of those have changed throughout the years, okay? What is murder? Well, the definition of murder has changed throughout the years.
Sure.
What is theft? Has that changed? What is robbery? Things like that. Now, there is also a term called malum et prohibitum, which is basically like a society wrong. 200 years ago, speeding was not a crime because there wasn't anything to speed in. Drunk driving, marijuana possession.
Driving without a
seatbelt.
seatbelt.
Exactly. Those are things that society in that current point in time has deemed inappropriate. And those do frequently change, where those first universal wrongs have kind of always been there.
Now, our society, but we don't all get together and vote this is wrong or this is right. We accept what's right or wrong by what somebody says is right or wrong.
Well, and that's true. And in different parts of the country, different people accept different things as societal wrongs. There are actually very few federal laws on the books because federal jurisdiction is actually very, very limited. Most of the laws that we have that are wrongs are state laws, and each state is free to make their own versions of that. Now, the federal courts have looked at those state wrongs in various different times and said, you're going too far. You're not going far enough. So there are standards out here, but those standards are what we would consider the floor of your laws, your minimums. And each state is free to make their own outside of that, but they can't go below those certain constitutional protections of individual liberties. I'll give you an example. In Tennessee, we have a thing called, as far as to how a search warrant is vetted, okay? We have a test. The federal system uses the thing called the Gates standard, which basically is a totality of the circumstances to determine whether or not probable cause exists for a search warrant. Tennessee actually goes above that, or did up until about 2 years ago, to another test where you had certain prongs that had to be met. It's what's called the Angular-Spinelli test. That has to do with the veracity of the person involved versus whether they're known or unknown and how long this information was known beforehand and things like that. We actually give you more constitutional protections than we do than the federal government does. The federal government allows a good faith exception where if a police officer makes an error, okay, as long as that error was done in good faith, that error is harmless and will not deem a warrant non-valid or an arrest non-valid or a search non-valid. Tennessee does not recognize that good faith exception. We are strict scrutiny in the sense that if it's not done correctly, it's not valid. So we actually give you more constitutional protection in Tennessee than the federal minimum that everybody has out here.
That's a good thing, isn't it?
I think so. I think, I believe that Thomas Jefferson's version of the government governs best is government that governs the least. I'm out here to protect people's freedoms. I'm out here to protect people's rights that are maybe having to try to have those rights taken away by the government. So if we have government, and government is necessary, by all means it's absolutely necessary, but we should only use it where it is necessary. And when it is necessary and we should use it in a manner that is the most effective outcome, positive outcome for our citizens. If we're going to spend money on it, let's get the most bang for our buck. Let's have the most production and the best quality of life we can for our citizens by using that.
Now, if they reverse one of these laws or change it and you're in jail, do you get out now that they've changed it? Or you say, oh, I did that when it was illegal
Possibly.
and now it's...
Possibly. And there's differences on that. There's what's called ex post facto or retroacting of laws. Sometimes the court will say, we're going to change our version of this statute saying that this is no longer a crime. But that doesn't change it for the people that broke the law when it was a crime. Now, there are certain things that they have come out with that have said, we're going to make this no longer a crime and every prior conviction is vacated. Usually it's something more egregious when that happens versus something that may be just a procedural change that's out here. I'll give you an example. Up until last year, it was a violation of Tennessee law to be what's called a habitual motor vehicle offender. That means if your license has been revoked so many times, you've had so many DUIs, you can be declared by a court to be what's called a habitual motor vehicle offender. Once that happens, if you are caught driving, it is a felony. Just you driving a car is a felony. Well, the Supreme Court said, we're not going to do that anymore. Actually, it wasn't the Supreme Court. I think the legislature actually come in and repealed that law and said that that is no longer a crime.
Why did they do that? The Tennessee legislature? Or
The Tennessee legislation came in and said that's no longer a crime. I really don't know. It didn't really make... I mean, it wasn't like it was some moral high ground or anything like that.
It didn't. It's not like the people that were doing that got lobbyists together.
No, the only thing I can figure is that there's been a large push in our legislature to stop basically the snowball effect on people for behavior. And let me explain what I mean by that. If you lose your license and it gets revoked, you've got to pay thousands of dollars usually to fix that problem, whatever that problem is. And every time you're caught driving on it, then that problem just snowballs further and further and further. I think they did that basically to try to make it easier for people to get their license back and get back on the right track, which makes sense.
Sure, yeah.
But I think that was the main reason. But now, that didn't necessarily vacate everyone that's ever had a conviction of that before. It didn't go back and vacate those.
You would think that it would.
Well, the Supreme Court would have the discretionary to be able to do that. But they didn't necessarily on that one. I've seen them do it before, but not necessarily there.
So until they do that.
Yeah, until they do that, if you've got priors on your record, you've got priors on your record. So.
You'd almost need a menu to look at and say, okay, what's illegal and what's I'm in Georgia now, I can do that. Oh, I'm in Tennessee, I can't do that.
It gets complicated, and you as a citizen are deemed to know what is against the law and what isn't. But I can show you. That book's that thick.
I'd have to have a cue card with me.
Well, yeah,
make
it's
sure
Title 39 of the Tennessee Code Annotated. It's several hundred pages thick. Now, the only laws that and there's the old adage, ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Right.
Well, our tax laws, our tax code is so complicated, they've made an exception to that for our tax laws. Because they're so complicated, they say, okay, you might not have known that. They have actually carved out an exception to the old adage for our tax code.
The federal or state?
Federal, yeah.
What's a good thing?
Well, it can get complicated. When you have to have an expert explain it to you. That's a lot.
When you have to have an expert explain it to you, and you're doing something normal, there's something wrong with the system. I think.
Exactly.
Are you familiar with Josh Dublin, the Innocence Project guy?
Well, I'm definitely familiar with the Innocence Project, but I'm not familiar with Josh Dublin.
Josh Dubin, I think is his name.
Okay.
He's a big proponent of that.
I'm not familiar with him, but I am definitely familiar with the Innocence
I've
Project.
always been interested in people that spend years and years in prison and they find out that they were innocent.
It's, I couldn't imagine how bad that would be, but yeah, it does happen.
I'm sure it's more than we would think.
It is, I'm sure. And doing this business is, and trying jury trials as I've done for the years, I will say that juries mostly get it right. I think they do. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, I would say they get it right the vast majority of the time. Mm-hmm. I can only think of 3 times that I've been involved in a jury trial, and I've tried probably 40 to 50 over the years. I can think of 3 times the jury just completely missed it. Twice went in favor of my client. 1 time did not. I'm still working on that one in the appellate process, where the jury just basically just missed it. It doesn't happen very often because most of the time I think juries can see through the smoke.
That's the idea.
And figure out really what's going on.
That's the idea, is our system gets it correct.
Yes. They, I think they do. And we don't know is still a correct answer.
Well, you have to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And in our system, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. A lot of people have no clue what that means. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you the definition of it, and you're still going to be probably confused what that means because it is purposely meant to be that way. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt in Tennessee is that proof rendered by an examination of all of the facts and the evidence. If that proof is sufficient to let your mind rest easy as to the certainty of guilt, a moral certainty that this person is guilty. Now, people ask me all the time, well, is that 95%? Is that 90%? Is that 97%? And I look at them and say, only you can define that. What amount of proof do you need to let your mind rest easy as to the certainty of guilt? And if we surveyed 12 people, we're going to get 12 different answers to that.
And it may be the day that they're talking about it.
Exactly.
People change their mind
People
too.
do change their minds. And, it's, people often will, these cases that we see that are in the media, these big profile cases that we often see. And the jury will come back and we're all sitting there scratching our heads like, how did they come up with that?
Yeah.
Well, number one, we weren't there listening to it.
Yeah,
they were.
We weren't there for 5 days.
No, and number 2, it is all about that individual's perception. But in our law system, 12 people have to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt unanimously that you're guilty. So that's your first stop. There are so many stop gaps in our laws to keep an innocent person from being convicted. Number one, the very first one is when you're arrested, that affidavit goes before a magistrate, somebody that's trained in the law that reads over this and says, does this allege a crime? Does this lay out at least probable cause that this person did commit this crime? If the answer is no, you go home. If the answer is yes, then you go on to the next phase. Now, probable cause is that first thing. That's probably just above the bottom of my shoe in the burden of proof, and that is they probably did it, okay? And probable cause is that there is articulable facts that I can convince to a person over here that you committed this crime, okay? It's not foolproof, but it is smoke. Not necessarily fire, but it is smoke. Now, what happens after that? You go in front of a magistrate for your arraignment that does the exact same thing. And that's usually a judge at this point. It's going to read this and say, yeah, okay, it's in there. Check.
Or it might be in there.
Or if it's like, no, okay, you're gone. Guy's out of jail. Now, what he will do is he will set the case for what's called a preliminary hearing. That has to be done in 14 days if the person's in custody. If not, it can be done within usually 90 days. At that time, the state of Tennessee has to bring in actual proof. Actual witness testimony, actual physical evidence to establish to that judge that there's probable cause. It's no longer what's written in the piece of paper. It's now, I've got to hear from the witness. What did you see? What did you hear? Who did this to you? Was it this person? You have to find at least that probable cause. If that's the case moves forward. If it's not, the case is dismissed. At that point, it goes on to what's called the grand jury. Now, the grand jury is made up of 12 citizens. They look at the case. Again, probable cause standard, but they have to 12 people be unanimous that probable cause is made. So now you've had how many steps so far?
Well,
that's
if you
looked
count
at that?
the police officer, 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
that's
now
one.
we've had 4 checks and balances to see if this person is even accused of a crime. Then we go to a jury. Now, a jury has to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is that much higher standard that we talked about as to whether or not
To their comfort.
to their comfort, 12 new people to determine that. Judge acts as number 13, meaning the judge has to be convinced of that beyond a reasonable doubt.
What if they vote yes and the judge votes
says
no?
You're done.
Does that ever happen?
It's very rare, but it does happen.
Like
occasionally.
never?
No, I wouldn't say never. I've seen it, but it's not
One
very
out of
common.
100?
1 out of 50, maybe.
So
most of the time, what will happen is that happens before the jury votes. Okay, we have 2 different motions within a trial. At the end of the state's proof, at the end of the government's proof, we have what's called a Rule 29 motion. Okay, and what that means is that we say, Judge, we need you to look at this. You know, any matters of question, always defer. You know, try most favorable to the state. Okay, could any reasonable juror look at this case and say this is proof beyond a reasonable doubt? If no, game over. If yes, then it goes on to the defense's side to put on the defense witnesses. At the end of all that, before the jury ever gets it, now we come back and we do another Rule 29 motion. And we say, Judge, now that you've seen this case, and it's not necessarily what the judge would do, but he would say, based on everything I've seen, could a reasonable juror say, yep, there is enough here for proof beyond reasonable doubt? If he does, then the case goes to the jury. That's his role as 13th juror. He doesn't necessarily say...
He's not at the end. He's in the beginning.
He's not voting. He's looking at it at the beginning.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Saying, now that I've heard everything, could a reasonable person look at this case and say, yes, there's proof beyond reasonable doubt? If it does, it goes forward. If not, it doesn't. I've seen them not go forward. Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. Now, the jury looks at the case. The jury says, there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. All 12 of us vote yes, he's convicted. If they all say no, he's acquitted, case is over. If there's a split, and those do happen, then at that point he's not convicted, but he can be retried. That's a hung jury.
If one votes yes and 11
vote no, then he can be retried.
Or if one votes no and 11 votes,
Vote
still
yes.
hung.
Yeah. And now, at that point, the state can determine whether or not they want to exercise another jury trial.
How long do they have to decide that?
Usually it's within 30 days.
It's not like 5 years.
No, because you're getting into speedy trial rights at that point. Yeah. Most of the time, in my experience, is and what we'll do is, if those situations, we will all pretty much agree to poll the jury. And what that means is we want to vote. We want to know where they stand. 10 yes, 2 no.
Before they go into deliberate.
No. When they come back and they say, we can't make a decision, we're hung.
Yeah.
The judge will declare a mistrial, meaning they can't go back and fix it at that point. But then a lot of times we'll want to poll the jury and say, where are we at? I've seen 10-2. I've seen 9-3. I saw a 3-way split.
That'd be good.
4 yes, 4 no, 4 undecided.
That'd be good information to have if the state wants to
pursue. Well, and if they've got 11 no's and 1 yes, they may say,
it's not worth it.
Now, if the opposite's there, they may say, yeah, let's try it again.
Or depending on the crime.
I had one that was a 3-way split. 3 yes or 4 yes, 4 no, 4 couldn't make their mind up. They didn't retry that one. That's just one example of that. I've had probably 7 or 8 hung juries over the years. They're not very common, but they do have them occasionally. Now, if they're convicted, they go to the Court of Criminal Appeals. Now that is
or they can go, or
if they wish to appeal it.
Yeah, does that cost them?
No. If they're indigent, that's something that's still included with the right to counsel. Now, at that point, that is a 3-judge panel that will have the transcript of the trial, all the exhibits, all the motions, and everything. And they will look through it once you do your appeal. And there's a whole art to that too. Once you do your appeal, then you have that 3-judge panel that's going to look at that case. Now, they're going to look at several different things. They're going to look at, number 1, sufficiency of the evidence. They're not going to retry the case. They don't reweigh the evidence. They're kind of like that trial judge. They're going to say, based on everything in here, could a reasonable juror have convicted him? And they're going to vote. And it's 2-1, 1-2, whatever. Those three judges are going to vote. And that's another stopgap in that, whether or not that's just another stopgap.
Yeah.
And they're also going to look at what they call de novo, which basically means just relook at any motions to determine whether or not the trial judge did it correctly or not. As far as motions to suppress evidence, motions to allow evidence in, things like that. Now, there is another tier in Tennessee's courts called the Supreme Court, the Tennessee Supreme Court. That is a 5-judge panel. Now, they have discretionary jurisdiction. They have law clerks that will look at these cases to determine if there's something worth their time.
Now, which court is this?
This is the Tennessee Supreme Court.
So after there's left the 3 judges.
Judge panel, they can go up again. You can appeal up to the 5-judge panel.
So is that included in their indigent?
It can be. I have never told a client that I wouldn't do that because it's not a lot of work. Basically, everything's done. I basically do about a 3-page thing and I send it up there. It's not like So, and number 2, it just gives them another stopgap. Yeah. I think it's a good thing to do. Yeah. It takes me more time not to do it, quite frankly, than it does to send it up there.
All right. So now you send it up there.
So they're going to have law clerks. They're going to look at these. We call it a Rule 11 or a permission to appeal or a writ of certiorari. There's several different names for it. Where basically they're going to look at this and determine whether or not they believe this is a constitutional issue or something that really they need to look at. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to review the case.
99 out of.
I'd say probably 95 out of 100. They don't review the case. They say cert, deny, and go on.
But somebody, you feel like somebody's reading it.
But they've got their staff attorneys are reading them.
Yeah.
So I mean that's just another protection. So,
a possibility.
Yeah. So I do think we have as good a system as we can have to keep innocent people out of prison.
You'd think
Does it happen? Yeah, but
I mean that's a lot of work.
That's a lot of stopgaps in there to keep an innocent man out of prison.
How does it all get through there? And that some of these innocent guys that've been convicted.
The things you hear on the news are the innocent people that are convicted. That's one. You don't hear about the million that were correctly convicted.
Right.
We hear about in the Innocence Project, and we hear about the ones on the news of these ones that are wrongfully convicted in our media. Well, now that's correct. They were wrongfully convicted, but you don't hear about the 100 that were correctly done right. Or not the 100, the million that were correctly done right. It's a very small percentage.
And you got to question how they go through all these stopgaps, and there's all these people went through all this process. You got to say, they're guilty.
Most of the ones that you see in the Innocence Project are older cases. They're not newer cases. And a lot of it is when either if DNA was in its infancy or pre-DNA or
a witness lie, maybe.
Yeah, something like that would come up where there is newly discovered evidence that tends to flip the thing around.
Twist.
Yes. We have a thing in our law which we call a writ of error coram nobis. It's Latin for basically an error, okay, where you have a witness that turns around, you find out was lying. And it's usually not enough for the witness to come in and say, I lied.
Yeah.
You got to prove it. Because people change for whatever reasons all the time. That's not going to cut it. You got to prove it. Like they weren't even there kind of thing. Or you find that there was evidence withheld that shouldn't have been, or so it's usually got to be something pretty egregious.
The proof was contaminated.
Something. It's got to be something pretty egregious. Now, we also have the Post-Conviction DNA Act in Tennessee where if we do have cases where DNA is discovered after the fact, and again, these are older cases, we can reopen those. There's no time limit to those to be able to go back and look and make sure that something wasn't done wrong.
Now these people, you're being a public defender, I assume you're not working for the rich and famous.
No,
right?
Not at all. Not at all. It's a good question.
I mean, why be that one?
Why?
Yeah. Why not be the other guy?
Well, several reasons. Number one, somebody's got to fight for people. And I believe that's me, among others of us. I believe it is my calling to work with those that need help, that need a voice, that need someone to represent them. The vast majority of the people I represent are guilty. We don't have law enforcement in this area that just randomly arrests people that isn't guilty.
Yeah.
But they still have the right to be treated fairly. They still have the right to be heard, and they still have the right to have someone stand up for them to make sure that they are treated fairly and justly according to our law. I feel like that's me, and I've always felt like that's me. That is one of the things that I feel called to do, is to be able to stand up for people and give people a voice. There are three, and I'm going to explain this to you. People always ask me, okay, you're running for public defender. Why you? Why should I vote for you? I get that, from people. Well, why you? I get it. I'm glad the office is there. I'm glad you do this. Why you? Well, there are jobs, right? We all have those. Mm-hmm. That's how we get our pizza, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's how we sit on the couch at night. That's how we have a couch to sit on at night.
Right.
That's why we pay the bills.
We got to work.
Yeah. Bottom line, we got to support ourselves, support our family. We all have those. Now there are careers. I'm a lawyer. That's my career. Whether I work here, whether I work there, whether I'm doing whatever, I'm a lawyer. That's what I do. My calling is to work with the poor and be a public defender. To be a voice for the poor.
What gave you that calling?
Of the Lord. I honestly feel that way.
Do you remember the time when you said, I'm going to be a public defender?
I don't necessarily know if it was necessarily a Damascus Road moment with me, but I'll tell you when it was. When I graduated undergrad, I did an internship with the juvenile court. And I got to really enjoying working with those families and working with those kids. And it stuck. And I was originally going to take a year off and then go to law school. Well, I also hang around with a lot of cops during that year. Mm-hmm. So what did I do? I went to Dan Gilly and I got a job as a deputy sheriff. Mm-hmm. I loved it. I loved getting out here helping people. I loved getting out here making a difference. But I was still always wanting to be a lawyer. Well, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, said, "You're not getting any younger, homie. You're knocking on 30's door here. At what point are you actually going to do this? Because you've been talking about it ever since I met you." Yeah. So I did. I was a 30-year-old first-year law student. But I've always had that desire to help those that need help. I did a 400-hour internship my last year of law school with Richard Hughes at the Public Defender's Office here in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And I got so much joy out of that, helping other people. I've really felt like, for the first time since I was out here running the streets as a cop, that I actually, at the end of the day, I made a difference. At the end of the day, I felt like I did something worthwhile. I felt like I did something more than just made money that day. Nothing wrong with making money. We all got to make money. But I felt like I did something in addition to that. And I wanted to keep doing that. And now Richard didn't have any positions open. I went into private practice. I did a lot of federal work, bankruptcy work, estates, wills, criminal defense, and things like that. Richard calls me about the middle of May of 2012. He says, "Hey, I'm getting a position coming up in June 1st. You want it?" There wasn't any doubt in my mind, but I said, "I'll call you back. I'm running it by my wife first." Yeah. And I said, "I really want to do this." And she said, "I know you do. Go for it." I always saw the smile on your face when you did it for free for a year. And I've been there ever since. And I love it.
Why do you have to run for public defender? I don't understand. To the layman. Okay. What does that mean?
Well, it's an elected. Okay. Well, the public defender's office is a state office. Okay. There are 10 of us, 10 attorneys, and 3 support staff members and 1 investigator in the office. We cover Bradley, Polk, McMinn, and Monroe counties. 230,000.
Where's the office at?
We have 2 offices. Our main office is in downtown Cleveland. It's at the corner of Central and Broad Street.
Next to Gardner's.
My office is right above Gardner's Market, literally. But we have a shop on the other. We have a storefront on the other side. Okay. But yeah, literally, my office. I can hear Jimmy downstairs.
That's where I used to go to the dentist.
Okay, well there you go. Yeah. Well, I can hear Jimmy Olsen back downstairs. But our main office is there. We also have an office in Monroe County. That is a satellite office. We have 2 attorneys and a support staff member up there because we cover such a large district. That way we've got coverage on both ends of the district. Now, it's an elected office, constitutionally elected office from the state of Tennessee. In other words, the district public defender, Richard Hughes. He is the current elected district public defender. He's elected every 8 years. And then he has his assistants that work under his lawyers underneath him. I'm one of those. Well, Richard's retiring after 33 years with the public defender's office. He brought me in. I think the world of him. Great guy, great mentor, you're talking about a man that roll up his sleeves and get in the trench with you. Now he would do it.
No doubt. His daddy was the same way.
Yeah, I mean, works hard. Good man. He said, I'm done. I've made my coffee after 33 years. I want to continue building on his legacy, build my own legacy, and take the office into the next decade. That's why I'm running.
Do you have an opponent?
Not as of today, but I mean, that could change tomorrow. Anybody with a law degree, anybody with a law license that's lived in Tennessee, I think over 1 year and practiced law at least 5 years could get in the race that's here in the area. So
you had
I mean, that could change tomorrow, and I've been ever vigilant about that because I don't take anything for granted. Just because just because nobody's running against me today doesn't mean no one's running against me tomorrow.
When is the election?
May the 3rd is the Republican primary. So yeah,
That's
we
a
have
while.
6 months. Yeah, 7 months.
Have you ever read the book Franz Kafka, The Trial?
I have not.
You've got to read that book.
The Trial. Okay.
The Trial.
The
by
Trial.
Franz Kafka.
I'll have to check that out.
It's
okay, I haven't read that. No.
It's about a legal battle that he had back in, I think it was England or London. They don't have the same system we have.
Yeah.
They wouldn't tell him what he did wrong. That's where we get the phrase, that's Kafkaism. You ever heard somebody say that?
I have heard that, yeah.
Well, that's where they get it from that book.
Well, and so many things that we have in our Constitution was put in there because they were tired of the abuses of the government of England.
That's what Franz Kafka was about,
And,
the trial.
That's exactly when you said that.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason we have the Fifth Amendment in our Constitution and the Sixth Amendment in our Constitution that talks about trials and due process and the right to counsel and the right to have a public reading and public trial and the reading of your case and the indictment and that grand jury looking at your case and the order of the indictment. That's all there to keep that from happening to people.
But let's take it to a human level. Let's say
Okay.
you're out here and you're working and you've done something and you go out here and you say, oops, yep, that one was wrong.
Yeah, you got your flow chart out.
You have no money. You've got to go to work. You're worried. You're scared. You can't focus on your regular life. To me, if I was going to be a lawyer, what you're doing is what I would do. So
And
my
that's
hat is off
what
to you.
I want people to feel comfortable. We have people that we don't represent call us all the time that have just described what you've just described. Now, our office to officially represent you has to be appointed by the court. Okay? You have to apply saying to the judge, I can't afford a lawyer. You fill out an affidavit of indigency laying out your finances saying, I can't afford to hire Scott Canavis, Jimmy Logan, whoever. This is what they charge, and I don't have it. I'm barely making ends meet. I'm paying every dime I get, puts food on my table, and pays my bills. And yes, I make bad decisions, and this is why I'm here, but I can't afford that. The court will look at them, say, yes, you can't afford that. Public Defender's Office has been appointed. Well, that doesn't help the guy you just described that just says, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. What did I do?
Right.
Those people are free to call me too. And I get calls all day from people saying, I'm in trouble, what do I do? And I'll give you an example. I had a gentleman call me, and of course I'm not mentioning his name or anything like that. He actually got referred by another attorney that doesn't do criminal law and said, who called? And he said, I don't know, call Leon. Here's his number. So he calls me, calls my cell number. I don't mind, called me up. I helped him get through the problem. Now, it was in a different jurisdiction. It was in a different set of law. It wasn't something I personally could handle. But by golly, he's got a lawyer now that can. And sometimes that's just all it takes is somebody willing to listen to you. Like you said before, sometimes people call me to just need somebody to listen.
Just want to hear it again.
Yeah. And now people come see me about civil law all the time. It's not something I do, but I know people that do. And I can refer them out to someone that can help them with those kind of cases. We are there as a community resource. We're taxpayer funded.
Well,
we're here for the taxpayers.
If we didn't
And we
have
have
that,
to.
everybody'd be in jail, wouldn't they?
What's that?
I mean, if you didn't have that, the poor people would just go to jail.
Well, what would you do? Well, not necessarily. They have the right to counsel, but let me explain to you what that situation would look like. The Sixth Amendment says that anybody that's in danger of losing life or liberty at the hands of the government has the right to an attorney to represent them. That's paraphrase what the Sixth Amendment says, among other things. That has evolved throughout the years. The most current Supreme Court case is a case called Gideon versus Wainwright. Now, let me explain to you a little bit about this. This was in the early 60s. Now, Gideon was a gentleman that was accused of breaking into and stealing things out of a pool hall in Florida. Now, they arrested Gideon. Now, at that point in time, Florida, you had, in order to get an appointed attorney, you had to be facing the death penalty. Because at that point, the law was not near as clear and as to how each state was going to do it. He couldn't do it, didn't have the money. Well, that's fine. You're still accused of a crime. Here's a trial date. They had a trial. He did the best he could by himself. This guy's got a, not even high school education.
He didn't stand a chance,
Didn't stand a chance. Was convicted, sent to prison. He appealed it. He had a smart enough mind to keep pushing the issue. It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court under the case of Gideon versus Wainwright. They overturned his conviction. They reversed and vacated it, set his case for a trial, and said, Florida, you have to give this man a lawyer. He's at danger of losing life, or not in life, but liberty as a result of government accusations against him. So you know what they did? They had a new trial with a lawyer appointed. Guess what happened?
What?
Gideon got acquitted. Gideon went home. He got found not guilty. That is our current case law in the United States that controls who has the right to a public defender and who doesn't.
Almost more importantly, who determines whether they can afford it or not?
That's
another
thing. That's
who determines that?
The law says that if you can't afford a counsel, then one will be appointed. But like you say, there's no bright line law that says what that means. What does indigency mean? It's up to the individual judge to determine that. And I have seen various interpretations of that.
Yeah.
I've seen this extreme over here, which is you made bond, you're not indigent. Tough. The only people that are getting a free lawyer, or not free lawyer, but lawyer at taxpayer expense, because it ain't free, is people that are incarcerated. I've also seen it to this extreme over here, which is everybody accused of a crime. Judge, I can't afford a lawyer. Okay, there you go. And you get one. And I've seen everything in the middle of that. I think there's got to be a happy medium.
Somewhere in there, there's got to be a standard.
If I get an OR bond and I get out, or I make a $50 bond, or $100, I pay out, 10% of my $500 bonds, but the bondsman's $72. It's $50 plus the bonding fee. I can come up with that. My mama can come up with that. My grandma can come up with that. Are they going to drop $3,000 for an attorney for me? $72, $3,000. Okay? Just because you got out of jail doesn't mean you're indigent. And on the same extreme, just because you're accused of a crime, we need to look at it. Some people can afford a lawyer. I think there's got to be some variation there. It's got to be an individual decision where, and most of our judges are in the middle. I'm just giving you two extremes, where they look at it and say, okay, and also you got to look at the crime and you've got to look at the court. General Sessions Court, which is your lower misdemeanor type things, not the trial level, that first level, that preliminary hearing level like I discussed earlier, $2,000 or less, doesn't really matter what you're charged with. That's about what they're going to charge you to come to court and do that. Sometimes way less. Now, this guy can afford that. A first-degree murder defense in criminal court's $50,000 to $100,000, depending on what all gets done. He can't afford that. There's no, you make $300 a week, you get a lawyer or you don't. You've got to look at what the person's charged with, because legal fees go up.
Yeah.
With the more work involved.
Can he afford the thing he's convicted of?
There you go. Yeah. So I think you've got to have that.
So who's determining that?
The judge.
But which judge?
Whatever judge and each judge. Well, and each judge is going to look at that and look at it a little differently. That General Sessions Court, the one that does the preliminary hearing, he makes his own determination. Once it goes through the grand jury and comes up here for the trial level, you've got a new judge that makes another determination, because the fees are different.
Yeah.
And the stakes are higher. And it does make a difference as to who does and who doesn't.
Golly, that's so complicated.
It can be. It can be. And that's why, people come to me a lot of times and they ask me things. They say, well, I can represent myself, can I? I say, yeah, you can. You can also give yourself a vasectomy too, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Right.
You might want to go to somebody that knows what he's doing. And I'll give them this example. I'll be like, what do you do for a living? He said, well, I finish drywall, or I'm an electrician. Okay, that's great. I like to think I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm not going to electrocute and blow my house up. I'm calling you. Same thing. You're an intelligent person, but you don't do this for a living. Come see me. That's why I'm here. You need to go to people that's their skill set, because like you say, it's not an easy thing to navigate if you're not familiar with it.
You wouldn't be able to do it. You had to. Now, you ever remember the sitcom Night Court?
Absolutely, one of my favorite shows.
Boy,
Does Harold T. Stone?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Did you watch that growing up?
I did. I sure did. It was one of my favorite shows.
Because they would just meet them. The defender, the public defender, would just
Christine Sullivan.
the court-appointed attorney would literally just meet them.
Yeah.
Who is the guy that said, Your Honor, this guy, and he wouldn't even hardly, he was just reading it right then.
That was Dan Fielding.
Yeah, Dan Fielding.
Yeah, absolutely. John Larroquette.
That's not what these people are getting, we hope, right?
No. It better not be.
Now,
and the sad thing is that, when you see the media stereotype of a public defender, what do you see? You see that.
I see that.
Or you see some guy that's accused of this crime. The next thing you know, some kid comes in. It looks like he's all of about 23 years old. His ears are still wet. His hair's still wet. Hi, I'm your public defender. And he sits down his law books from his last law book class that he still has. And the guy's like, oh, God, you're going to get convicted. That's what the media portrays us.
That's not what we're getting.
No. And let me tell you why. At least it's not in my office. Our newest attorney has been there 4 years. Our newest employee has been practicing law at our office. He's been practicing longer than that. Has been practicing law at our office for 4 years. Tried murder trials, tried jury trials. He graduated #1 in his law school class from the National School of Law. Brilliant, brilliant young man. That's our newest person. We've got guys that have been practicing law almost 40 years that work there. We have a great amount of experience, and we are blessed.
That's a testament to Richard Hughes.
That's a testament to Richard Hughes.
He's done a good job.
He has. He has done an outstanding job. He's put together a great team that want to be there, that want to do this job, that are sincere about helping people. And I'll give you an example. The newer guy that we just hired, the one not just hired 4 years ago, our newest guy, he's been on the phone all weekend dealing with a case that's set for trial in about 3 weeks. It's a murder case.
All weekend?
All weekend, talking to the prison because his client's being housed over there, talking with his family, the kid's family, trying to work through what's best, to come up with what's in this kid's best interest.
He didn't go up to LaCoy and walk this weekend.
He did get on his bike and ride a little bit because he told me that. But that's the caliber people we have.
Do you think Richard created that atmosphere?
I think he did because he's got that. He cares about people. I've seen him give his last $5 to somebody just that happened to walk in that needed it. And that's the culture we've built in that office. That's who we got. I'm so proud of them.
I'm going to say that some other communities or cities probably don't. It's probably a large spectrum, but some probably don't have that.
I'd say they don't. And and ultimately, it comes down to people. I always tell people this: your reaction to being a lawyer is very powerful. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. There's no in between. Because contrary to the way the news media presents, it ain't the most glamorous job in the world. It's not the easiest job in the world. The guy in the window in the corner office with the $3,000 suit talking about his golf game, that's not real. Are they out there? I'm sure they are, but they're not around here. The guys I know around here are in the trenches helping people. And you got to want to do it. You either love it or you hate it. Now, if you love it, you'll always love it. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to have a bad day occasionally because we all do. Who doesn't, right?
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you're not going to be happy doing anything else other than being a public defender. And we've all sat around at our office and talked about that and said, we all have our days. We're all prima donnas because we're all lawyers. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, is there anything else you'd rather be doing for a living than what we're doing now? No.
You're describing it somewhat as a ministry.
It is a ministry. It's absolutely.
Maybe that's a bad word for it.
No, not where I come from. It's not. It absolutely is a ministry. You know, my wife is the coordinator of the Loaves and Fishes homeless ministry that we have at St. Luke's. We feel called to work with those that need our help. It's my ministry. It's what I do. It's what I'm going to keep doing. And the blessing that we have in our office is that we have people. I have professionals that all feel that way. And you can't replicate that. You can't write a script for that. You just can't do it. That's the kind of people that we have. You either make it or you don't as a public defender. And if you do make it, you know you're in the right spot.
One thing you want is a local person that was born and bred in Bradley County.
That's right.
To be the public defender of indigent people that need representation.
That need it. That our Constitution says they have that right. This is America, and they have that right, and we're going to make sure that they have that right. I believe in freedom, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep that freedom intact for our people. And I think that is right. I think you do need somebody that understands the community, that is invested in the community. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. I was born here. I grew up here. I've served here. I've served 22 years the citizens of Bradley County in Southeast Tennessee, either as a police officer or now as a public defender. I'll be here till the end. When I'm done, I'll be in the backyard at St. Luke's Episcopal Church back there. That's where I'll be. That's what we have to have in leadership in this county, is people that are dedicated to it. And I believe I'm that person.
I know.
It was an honor.